Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new interview here on the Robinson Talk YouTube channel. Now today I'm joined by writer for The Athletic and correspondent for Man City, obviously for The Athletic, Sam Lee. So Sam, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well. I've got a new haircut, but I realise it makes my forehead look big. It's been four months since I've had this, so yeah, I might need to rethink for the next one. But yeah, I'm all right, thanks, mate. I'm all right. I'm all good. How's everything going?
All good here, thanks, and it's good to hear you're all right. And you, as I said earlier, obviously correspondent for The Athletic, and you write about Manchester City week in, week out.
Yeah.
But let's just go back a few years to when you were my age, so 13, 14, and in secondary school. What did
Yeah.
you actually want to be when you did eventually grow up, and when did it first come into your mind that you would like to be a journalist and write about football for a living?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what age, because I get asked this fairly often, I suppose, by people who want to get into sports journalism. I'm not sure what age I really wanted to do it. I remember when I was at, I think it was probably AS level or A level, so that was already kind of a sixth form thing. I did like an essay on newspaper coverage of games, and it was just tabloid versus broadsheet and the differences and that kind of thing. So I'd obviously kind of taken an interest in those kind of things around that age, maybe 16, 17. But I don't remember beforehand having any kind of strong feelings about doing it for a living. I remember I didn't want to go to university around that age, 16, 17. I just thought it was a bad idea. But the school I went to, they were kind of pushing everybody to do it. So I went along with it and did a sports journalism course. So that would have been around 17, 18 when I applied for that. But beforehand, I don't know. And to answer your question about what I wanted to do when I was 13, 14, I'm really not sure. It might have been something to do with computers, I think, but I don't ever remember. Although I might have written a couple of football essays at school, I don't think I ever had the idea of being a football writer that early. So it's always interesting when people kind of your age are involved in doing this, and especially like you guys who've got your own shows and stuff. So this starting way earlier than I did, like way earlier. And obviously, it's not just the writing side. There's podcasts and YouTube videos and everything. So yeah, I definitely didn't get started anywhere near as early as you did.
Yeah, so when did you actually make that first step into football journalism? And obviously, you've been doing it for The Athletic for, I think this is your sixth season, but when was that first sort of a job, you could say, in football media?
First job in football media. Well, obviously, so I went to university, and there was a couple of work experience things there where obviously you go into offices. I did some stuff at the Sunday Mirror for a week in like a December one year, and then I went back in April, and a couple of things at the Daily Star because that was in Preston. Um, I covered Burnley's Premier League home games, just the games, like basic match reports in what season would have been 2009 to 2010. But the first job afterwards would have been BBC. They were looking for kind of recent graduates uh, to like just come in on Saturdays and do a basic kind of rewriting of the match report. So the match reports would come in quite rough from the Press Association, and the BBC wanted them just to be down into four paragraphs. So boil all the information down into four paragraphs, do like, I don't know, 20 of those in 4 hours or whatever, put them up on the website and on CFAX, which makes me sound old. So that was the first job. That was the first job in journalism. That was the first proper one, yeah, BBC. And I just kind of, in terms of the lessons for like young journalists, if you get like an opportunity like that, just to do 4 hours on a Saturday, if you do it well, and you obviously you turn up on time and you're friendly and you speak to everyone else and you want to ask for more opportunities. I ended up then covering a load of different regional journalists who work around the country from the same Birmingham office. And I don't know, later on when I'd come back from traveling, I was basically doing like a 9 till 5 at the BBC, just on like freelance hours, just from filling in for people here, there, and everywhere. So it's like once you get your foot in the door, if you do a good job, then it hopefully leads to more stuff. So yeah, the BBC was probably the big break in that respect.
Yeah, that must have been absolutely amazing having one of your first major jobs in football journalism being at the BBC. What other opportunities came after that? Then, once you had left the BBC, or when you were still working at the BBC?
Yeah, so after university, I did the BBC like just Saturdays and sometimes Tuesday nights for the same thing. Um, but I was working at like a cafe and a gym as well for the majority of full time stuff. But then when I went traveling, like I said, we went to South America. I ended up pitching to like newspapers in the Middle East, like asking if they wanted any coverage of the Copa America, because that's where we'd be. We were in Argentina at the time, so we planned to go to some games, but I applied for press passes, got those, and then approached kind of places that produce football content. But actually, because like in the UK, the Copa America it's not got much traction. And where I was pointed was in the direction of the Middle East, because they've got a big like football crowd, and it's not specific to the Premier League or whatever; it's global. So I did that, and that was for Sport 360, who were in Abu Dhabi, I think. I can't remember now. It was about 10 years ago. So I was doing that, covering South American football and even Spanish football while I was still in South America, and that was in throughout the second half of 2010. Got back, went back to the BBC, and that's when I did the kind of freelancing and standing in for everybody else. And then it got to the summer. It was probably around probably around April, May actually in 2012, and I'd kind of given up on looking for jobs because I've been looking for 3 or 4 months and nothing really came up. But then one came up at goal.com as a sub editor. So, just editing people's work and stuff. And I applied for that. And I think with the university, the BBC stuff and the South American stuff of covering matches and the general interest in different types of football outside the Premier League, that helped with that. So yeah, I was at Goal from 2012. That was the big break. And then I only moved to the Athletic in 2019. I thought I would have left Goal before, but it was just a really good company. They kept giving me good opportunities. So everything I did and all the different roles I did was with Goal. So I was sub editor for a few months, then site manager, then assistant editor and that probably took 4 or 5 years. And then I was city correspondent for 4 years. And yeah, then I moved to the Athletic. When they launched, they approached me, and here we are. So yeah, there's only been a couple of jobs, but like I said, that BBC one was important, and then the one in South America helped. But I always felt the Goal. I just always knew. I remember being so nervous waiting to hear. The guy was like, "Oh, we'll let you know on Friday," and I remember getting the train to BBC on the Friday, and just being like, just being so nervous because I was like, I feel like this is going to kind of set me up for the rest of my career, because I just thought like once you get in a full-time job like that, more doors will open, and maybe not as many opened as I thought. But it was definitely a route in. And yeah, stayed with them for a few years because it was just such a good company. And now I'm at another really good company. So I've been lucky.
Yeah, we're going to talk about really, and obviously the Manchester City correspondent for the Athletic in a minute. But what was it like moving from obviously doing a lot of the editorial work for BBC and Goal to then moving to the more going out to matches and actually writing reports to them for the Athletic?
Yeah, it was a bit of a change, but I think I'd done quite a lot of different things. I think I'd always had in my mind as well, even from university and maybe just how I grew up. I can't really remember. I've always kind of thought, well, I'll try and be able to do a bit of everything anyway. And obviously that didn't even extend really to like video and podcast and stuff. Back then, it was just a bit of everything in terms of writing. But when I started at City, going to the games and writing about the matches and stuff, I think I'd kind of had enough experience with that before, even going back to Copa America, which would have been 5 or 6 years before. I think the big difference was needing to get news and information, because obviously you can talk about a team and you can maybe explain what they do or say what's good and what's bad. But to be a correspondent on a club, you want to get news, and obviously, like with the editors I had, they always pushed me to get news as well. So the big change was making contacts and realizing who to speak to, how to speak to them, when you do it, what you ask, what you do with that information, because sometimes you might get it and it might be wrong, or you might misinterpret it, or it's true but you don't know if you can believe it. All those kind of lessons. So that was the biggest change. I'm not really sure what that adaptation would have been really. Like, it was a strange one, just in terms of going back to what you were saying there, that adaptation. I could have ended my answer, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe people who wanted to do this will find it interesting. But it was a strange situation at Goal because we had a guy who was a freelancer, but he got a lot of stuff, like from City and some stuff from United. And he was so I was talking to the desk about ideas and what I should be doing, but he had his little bits of information. So we'd do articles together. So mainly in the first season, also 2015-16, which was Pellegrini's last at City, a lot of the news and stuff was coming from him. And we'd write it together, or I'd actually write the words, but it was his information, and we'd talk and like bounce around ideas and stuff. But I think it was 2016 when he moved on, and then it was like, right, okay, we need to kind of step out a bit and do it myself. And even throughout Pep's first season, I don't know if there was loads and loads of information, because some you get from the club and it can be the same stuff as everyone else gets just by being on the patch. But then in terms of picking up your own stuff, it kind of it came really through speaking to like kind of Spanish speakers around Pep, people who know Pep, and the information kind of came from there. And I think as soon as you start getting some good information, and you maybe get a good reputation, maybe more information follows then, and people are more willing to speak to you and help out. And I always found a goal that, while it was a great opportunity for me, and they were great, sometimes if you wanted to speak to agents or people in football, you had to explain what goal was. And it's saying like, it's a massive website, we've got 30 languages around the world and stuff, and maybe like, yeah. And I always thought that colleagues at big English newspapers always found it easier to speak to agents and stuff like that. But since I've moved to the Athletic, it's changed a bit. And I think some of my mates who work for the newspapers think that it helps to work for the Athletic, because they know, or they don't fear the Athletic in the sense that we're going to do a I don't know, like if there's a big transfer story, we might do it in a slightly different way. And obviously a bit of a reputation for doing that background article, so maybe agents are a bit more willing to work with us on stuff like that. So it's funny how things have changed over the years. But that big adaptation in terms of thinking, God, I need to get the info, that was the biggest change. And to be honest, even 5 or 6 years later, you wake up every day and you think, I need to get something. Who am I going to speak to today to get this? Because it's a bit of a minefield that you can never guarantee that the people you speak to are always going to know what you need to know or tell you what you need to be told. And it's a very interesting part of the job. And that has been and still is the biggest adaptation.
Yeah, it must be absolutely amazing working with the Athletic. And I expect there's a lot of people out there that think football writers just work on the Saturday and they write over the game and that's it. But I expect not only if you work with Man City and they've got 2 games a week easily with Champions League, Premier League, also press conferences, interviewing players and stuff post-match. How busy is the job being a football writer, not only reporting on Man City, but in general?
Yeah. Before, I mean, today I've not done. I'm trying to think what my workload has been today, and obviously I've got a bit of time to do this, which is nice. So it's not been that busy. But when I was at Goal in particular, I would kind of be like, well, I'd get the info, and when I had it, I'd write an article, and I don't know, I might do one maybe in-depth feature a week, maybe, and maybe that was just on a game, and maybe a couple of other things here and there. And I'd also do stuff like Friday afternoons, I'd sit at the training ground and cut up the videos from the press conferences. Sometimes I'd record a video myself and edit them together. Sometimes I'd just put what Pep did and use my time that way. But that was just killing time at the training ground and putting something together. And it was quite a laid back life. I certainly wasn't busy at Goal. I'd like to think I did a good job, and I think they were happy with me. But I wasn't really busy. But now it's really tough. Like there's a lot of demands. It's 3 articles a week. They don't have to be long. They don't all have to be like 2,000, 3,000 words. They could be shorter if it's news. But obviously there's the pressure like internally from me to want to do a good job, but also I'm thinking, people are subscribing, so they're paying. So you don't want to just put up an article that just ticks a box that people don't learn anything from. I've always, going back forever, I've always wanted to put at least one thing in my article that people didn't know before they'd read it. And obviously, ideally, more than 5, 6, 7 bits of information, hopefully. So yeah, it's a lot of work just to do that. And then obviously you've got podcasts, you've got people to speak to, the Q&As, which I like doing on the day of the game. So you're always replying to fans for, I don't know, probably the 12, 15 hours leading up to a game and after, responding to comments, because it's always good to respond to those. And that's just my own stuff. And then, there'll be colleagues who are like, oh, I'm writing about this. Can you find out about this? And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, it's I've got such a difficult life, because it is great. Like, and obviously this is an opportunity that a lot of people want to get into, and I'm not putting people off it at all, because it is good. At the end of the day, if I'm out of the house at the moment, with obviously the situation, I'm at games, so it's fine. But it is like, to answer your question, it is very busy. But I don't think that's the case everywhere. And I'm not trying to say we work harder or do better than anyone else. Just I've noticed that people I don't even know who work for like newspapers and other football websites, they're kind of like, they don't envy how much work people at the Athletic have got to do. We do have to do an awful lot. So yeah, at this end of the spectrum, there is quite a lot to do. But in some jobs, it can be a bit less. And obviously, if the bulk of your work is doing the matches, you might be traveling a lot or out of the house a lot. But you kind of do your work in those 2 hours around a game. But if the Athletic is different, we don't have to finish on the final whistle. So normally you'd go, write an article, final whistle, done. And then, do an hour or two at the stadium afterwards, then go home. But now with us, it's more like, right, the final whistle goes and then work starts. And then you've got, sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes you've got until the next morning, but however much time you need, then yeah, there's a lot more work afterwards on the day itself. So it's a different pattern. And yeah, like my life as a sports writer is pretty busy, but it's manageable. It's fine. Others not quite so busy, but obviously still very demanding, because the demands are the same. The editors, they might not want people to write specifically 3 articles a week. They might not want long, in-depth tactical analysis or background stories or whatever. But if there's a story going on, Aguero leaving, De Bruyne's new contract, the editors of everyone, wherever they work, will be like, what's going on with this? What's our angle on that? And the pressure is always there. So there's always pressure. It's just, I suppose, how the time is actually used and the other kind of articles you need to do around that. So it is, yeah, challenging, I suppose, but also obviously very rewarding.
Yeah, I expect it is, and obviously it is a dream job, really, isn't it? You for your daily job, you're writing and watching football. So let's go on to talk about, obviously, writing about Manchester City. And you said off air that you go to pretty much all the home games and as many away games as you can. What is it like on a normal match day at the Etihad when fans were there, and how much has it changed now during obviously COVID and these tough times at the moment?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a huge change at the moment, but in the same way that everything else has changed. So I know a lot of people, I'll get asked this question a lot: what's it like? And obviously it's different, but I can just say, like, what's, for you, in your case, going to school or not going to school when they've been closed, going to supermarkets, obviously not being able to see family, everything's different. But we just kind of, everyone kind of gets used to it, and we're looking forward to how it was before. But putting masks on before you go indoors anywhere, or seeing other people walking down the road towards you in a mask, or not feeling comfortable being within 2 meters, it's so weird. It's so different. And 18 months ago, we would have never even thought this would be possible. And it's the same thing about being in the stadium with a top level Premier League game or Champions League game going on, but with no fans. It's strange. It's eerie. It's different, but you just get used to it. And I suppose it's the same way. It's very similar, of course, to watching it on TV. Like at first, I remember when football came back in the Bundesliga, and everyone was kind of watching to see how it would go, and crowd noise or no crowd noise, and what people prefer and stuff. And it's not the same. And there's a lot of City fans I know who obviously they're enjoying it more because of the team's great. But obviously, there's some who don't bother watching it too much. It's just not the same. Can't get into it, and it's the same as being in the stadium. Like it's good. Like I'm not actually complaining. It's great to still be able to go in, but it is very different. But it's the same as everything else. Like you soon get used to it. We have to do certain things to make sure we can still work or go to school or survive, whatever it may be, and you just do it. So yeah, you got to go through and have your temperature checked and fill in a form before you go, and they check you on the system. They give you, you go in with a mask, they give you your pass, and you go around and all that. And it's a simpler setup because there's no fans in the stadium, so you just walk in straight to your chair rather than anywhere else. And yeah, you look around and there's just flags on the seats instead of anything else. You can hear some of the shouts, but it's, I don't know. I don't know. I've not noticed anything too different in City matches. I think overall in the Premier League there's a difference because there's not too many good end-to-end games where both teams are in it. Leicester against West Ham the other day was probably the closest I've seen all season. And I've been speaking to people who used to play about this, and they think, and I think, it just must be the crowd. Maybe if you go 2 or 3 goals down, there's no tension there, whether the crowd are either on your case or they're behind you trying to get you back into the game. It just seems like if you go 2 or 3 goals down, that's it, you're done. And maybe that's the crowd. But I don't think I've noticed that too much in City's games, because they generally, even last season, they didn't win all the time, but generally they just win their games. Generally, they play the game on City's own terms. So I've not noticed too much in terms of how it's actually impacted the game. But I think over the Premier League it has done. And it's just safe to say that obviously, even though we're still going to games, nobody thinks it's in any way, shape, or form better, and everybody's looking forward to having fans back, and hopefully, pretty much full by the start of next season if all goes well.
Yeah, hopefully, as you said, it will be next season. For you as a journalist, I expect you as a football fan, you want fans back as quick as possible. But do you find it easier writing a report of a game without the fans in the stadium, or does it not really make a difference to you?
No. Well, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of not been a factor, because one of the things about fans not being in the stadium is there's no traffic. There's nothing. Like, you can get in and out of the stadium dead easy. So often after games, particularly in the evening, I know that Pep won't do his press conference for probably about half an hour, and even if he does, it's on Zoom, so I can have it hooked up in the car. So normally, when it's the final whistle, I'll just go out, because there's nothing else to be gleaned. There's no reason to stay. There's nothing extra you can get, and obviously it's so much easier to get home. And then you think, right, I'm home now. I'm back in my little space, and I can think about what I'm going. If I don't know what I'm going to write, or even if I do, I can think about it on the 15-20 minute journey. So I've not really thought about that, but I don't think it will be any different. I mean, the only time I could say it's different is because I know people who kind of sit around me in the stadium. So, sometimes I'm writing and they're on their way past and they want to have a chat, which is fine. But then it's like, it distracts you a bit. Not that I'm complaining, but as a fact, it distracts you a bit. And now there's not that. That would be the only difference, I guess. Other than that, I don't think there'd be anything. I think once you're comfortable writing what you're going to write, it doesn't really matter where or how. I'm quite adaptable. I can write stuff on my phone if I need to. I was writing. I remember walking around New York writing an article on my phone once. I did even though I wasn't at the game, I was in Russia for the World Cup when Argentina got knocked out, and I got asked, because I'd done something on Argentina before. They got knocked out, and I got asked to do something on them, and I did it on my phone. I was sat outside a bar, so I'm quite adaptable in that sense. But no, also at the games when there's fans in the stadium, it's all right, it's fine. But obviously you can't drive home because 60,000 people are trying to get home as well. So you can't. You just stay there and wait for the press conferences and stuff. But no, it's good. It's all fine.
Yeah, I expect it must be a little bit different, but obviously it won't be for too long, hopefully. So finally, then before I let you go, as I said, I'm looking to get into the journalism and football media sort of world. What would be your advice for someone like myself and others looking to make it into football journalism, football media writing, maybe even for Man City? Some people might want to do that in the future. What would your advice to them?
Well, obviously, it doesn't have to be City. Any club, what I do is kind of adaptable to any club. And in fact, there'd be clubs with a smaller kind of, not following, but I mean, a smaller group of reporters who cover the club. And I've noticed that with the Athletic, if you offer a bit more in-depth stuff about a club like, I don't know, like Brighton, for example, there might not be something that they've necessarily had. So it's definitely applicable to anybody who wants to follow any club, or even, just the league. But I think the general advice, particularly for kind of around your age, and this is why you're doing so well already, just practice as much as you can. And obviously this for you is practice. I guess it's also something you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
You're not taking time out of your school holidays to do this if you didn't want to do it. So the more you do this, the more, look, you're interviewing adults. And I know I'm not any kind of superstar. There's no kind of being starstruck about it. But you're interviewing adults. You've got the confidence to do that already at your age, which is I don't know, maybe that's just what kids are these days. But I don't think you can take that for granted that you got that already. So when you get to a stage when you're a young reporter, maybe 18, 19, you won't be afraid to make a phone call to somebody to see what's going on, or an editor to check up on the status of your job application, or to talk things through and say, look, I've seen this job. What about this? What about that? Because also in journalism, one tip is, I think editors older guys than me, they appreciate people, picking up the phone and wanting to talk and dig around. So that helps. But just practice, do it a lot. If you want to write, then write match reports or write, I don't know, maybe look at the websites or newspapers you want to work for and not copy their style, but do stuff that works towards that. So one day, if you can apply for something like that, you've got, I don't know, months or years worth of practice. But yeah, just do it as much as possible. I'm not going to say you should or shouldn't go to university, because I did and it worked out. But I know others who did go and it didn't work out, and I know people who didn't go and they have got jobs. So I'm not going to give advice on that. But what I would say is just do it as much as possible, whether it's writing, podcasting, YouTubing. Just keep at it. And if you do get an opportunity, like I kind of tried to get across with the BBC thing, just trying to take it with both hands, and don't. I don't know, like they might say something like, "Oh, can you come and do next Sunday?" And you'd arranged to meet your mate, or you had a football match or something. But you might have to just think, if I say yes, it's going to lead to them asking me much more often. Like, unless you really, really can't get out of something, just try and make that sacrifice and cancel the other thing you had on to take that opportunity, and then you do well there, and they ask you again and again, and all of a sudden then you're in the door. So it's. Yeah, practice a lot and just be open to opportunities and possibilities. Because I think if you do get offered something like that and you say no or you can't do it, but if you really can't, then you don't beat yourself up. But if you say no because you're not sure, you'd rather have a lie-in or you'd rather see your mates or whatever, then you might not get asked again so quickly. So that's one of the big things, I think. Just when you do get an opportunity, which I think you will do if you keep working hard for long enough, just grab it. And and also, they might not ask you. You might have to ask them. Just say, look, is there anything else I can do? Is there any other shift? Is there any other department? Maybe, if it's somewhere like the BBC, I didn't even think of this at the time. But it was a big office with loads of BBC programming desks going on. Like, I could have maybe gone to speak to somebody else and said, look, is there anything going on over here? So it's just stuff like that. Don't be shy, basically. And obviously, like I say, you're already interviewing adults and asking questions, and it's not a problem for you at all. So this kind of stuff's perfect.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice, and I appreciate you coming on to speak today. Thank you for joining me.
No problem,
this
mate.
afternoon. As I said, thank you for joining me, and good luck with the rest of the season. Obviously, hopefully we'll see a report from you when Manchester City are crowned champions, which is probably going to be sooner rather than later in this Premier League season. And so as I said, thanks for joining me today. Thank you all for watching today's interview, and I'll see you guys all on the next one.